Well, welcome to you all, and I appreciate your being here on this Saturday afternoon for the annual Buddhist Council Engaged Buddhism discussion. And Dr. Rosan Yoshida organized this program, and our thanks go out to him. He invited two notable speakers. And I'll briefly introduce them now, and then they can go speaking one right after another. Our first speaker is Professor Emeritus Stephen Starr, who is a lifelong scholar in the issues related to nuclear warfare. He has most recently been at the University of Missouri at Columbia, and he is also a senior scientist with the Physicians for Social Responsibility, an organization I belonged to in the past, um, and he is an associate of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. And he will be talking to us about efforts to abolish nuclear weapons before they abolish us, a weighty topic that seems of heightened relevance right now. Our second speaker is Reverend Charlene Manuel. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's fine. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. She is a minister in the the Unity Church, rather, and was most recently chair of the board of the Unity World Headquarters, located just outside Kansas City in our own state. She is also immediate post-chair of the Global Ethic Committee of the Parliament of World Religions, which I believe is how Dr. Rosan got to know her. So we very much appreciate these learned speakers today, and I'll ask our first speaker, Professor Starr, to begin.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Um, I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to use in conjunction with my talk, so I'll share my screen. And let's see. It's always a little tricky to get these things. Okay. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Well, I'm not sure what the technical background is of a lot of you, but if you're like the students I've had at the University of Missouri, you haven't been taught much in school about nuclear weapons in general. So I wanted to begin with a brief discussion of how powerful these weapons are. This illustration kind of shows the relative size of the mushroom cloud. We've seen mushroom clouds before, but there's an enormous difference in the power. The Hiroshima 15 kiloton, a kiloton means 1,000 tons. So that's 15,000 tons of explosive equivalent to TNT. That's the size of the cloud there. In the middle, there's an image of a Russian 800 kiloton thermonuclear warhead. These are more modern weapons. Russia probably has 200 to 300 of those at launch ready status that they have trained at the United States, probably. And on the right was an image of the Tsar bomb. Russia detonated this bomb in 1961. It's a 57,000 kiloton bomb. 1,000 kilotons is a megaton, but I'm just using kilotons so we have a better idea of the comparison. Well, go back just a little bit. These are the largest non-nuclear explosive we have in the U.S. arsenal. It's 11 ton. They call it mother of all bombs. I mean, it's a huge bomb, of course. But, the Hiroshima bomb is roughly 1,000 times more powerful than that.
Wow.
So we go from that to thermonuclear weapons. But, we have to remember what happened to Japan when we dropped this. This is a picture of Hiroshima before the bomb was detonated, and this is Hiroshima 6 months after the bomb was detonated. It created a firestorm. I mean, the nuclear weapon is like a piece of the sun, really. It burns. When the bomb detonates, it starts out at 100 million degrees centigrade. It's hotter than the center of the sun, and the surface of the fireball's hotter than the surface of the sun. So it just ignites fires. You know, we don't want the fireball from the sun in our atmosphere. I want to mention too that Japan, since we have people watching in Japan, Japan is considered a virtual nuclear weapon state, and they can quickly construct a nuclear arsenal. In 1996, Vice President Joe Biden said that Japan could have nuclear weapons overnight. This is an interview with a German newspaper. And they've had the ability to build nuclear weapons ever since they built a plutonium breeder reactor and a uranium enrichment plant 30 years ago. And they have all the technology that's needed to produce nuclear medium range and intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I think this is going to become more of a problem worldwide because of what's going on in the Middle East right now. There's going to be a perception that nuclear weapons are needed to prevent an attack from the United States. Now, to again illustrate the difference in size, this was a picture taken in the Nevada desert of American soldiers who were marched out in the desert to observe nuclear tests. And that's a 22 kiloton atomic bomb that's being detonated 7 miles away. Now that's about the size of the bomb that destroyed Nagasaki in Japan. Now this is a video of that Tsar bomb taken from 90 miles away, the 57,000 kiloton bomb.
Яркое свечение все продолжается. В этом опыте оно длится необычайно долго.
I mean, the cloud there is probably 60 or 90 miles across. Anyway, you get the idea. The Russians have actually deployed 100 megaton bombs right now on their Poseidon drone nuclear torpedo. So, this torpedo goes 115 miles per hour. It has almost an unlimited range because it's powered by a small nuclear motor or power plant. And the fire zone from that can be up to 17,000 square kilometers. This is a picture of the submarine that carries it. There's 3 of these Belgorod subs that are now deployed. So the images of that giant bomb are not irrelevant to today. Now here's a comparison of the firestorms that are created. The one on the left is an image of an atomic bomb the size of Hiroshima that would be detonated over Tokyo Bay. And then you compare it. I tried to have the maps on the same scale. You can see the color zone here is where the firestorm would be from a Poseidon drone torpedo if it was detonated in the same spot. Well, today, that's an enormous bomb. Most bombs in our nuclear arsenals that the U.S. and Russia have are 10 to 100 times more powerful than the Hiroshima atomic bomb. And this is the world's nuclear arsenal. About 90% of all the nuclear weapons are possessed by Russia and the United States. It's a legacy from the Cold War. We came a long way for a while there. In 1986, there were 70,000 nuclear weapons. And about that time, the scientists came out and warned about nuclear winter, and it was a general realization that we just had to do something. People protested. There were 1 million people in New York City in 1982 that protested nuclear weapons. And at that time, they initiated the strategic arms limitation talks and then the strategic arms reduction talks between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And the arsenals went from 86,000 weapons to about 12,000 nuclear weapons today. So that was a huge step forward. I mean, I thought for a long time we were on the path to eliminate these arsenals, but it stopped. The U.S. basically decided that the neocons took over U.S. foreign policy, and they felt like we had won the Cold War and the U.S. was going to rule the world. And anyway, here we are. You can see that India and Pakistan, they have a nuclear arms race going now. They each have close to 200 nuclear weapons. Israel probably has more than 90 nuclear weapons. I'd say several hundred nuclear weapons. The scientists predicted about they started in the 1980s, but they've refined their methodology, and they had peer-reviewed articles that were published in journals 10 or 15 years in 2009 that predicted what they call nuclear winter, that those enormous firestorms will put enough smoke above the Earth in the stratosphere that it'll block the sunlight. And even in India-Pakistan nuclear war would probably block about 10% of the sunlight from reaching the northern hemisphere. And that would be enough to create the coldest average surface temperatures in the last 1,000 years. Let's see. Now, if it's a U.S.-Russian nuclear war where we detonate thousands of nuclear warheads, you can block up to 70% of the sunlight in the northern hemisphere and 35% in the southern. So the daily temperatures in the northern hemisphere would fall below freezing. In Central North America and Eurasia, it would be below freezing every day for up to 3 years. So that would just stop agriculture, and it would probably kill most humans and land animals. So that's enough to me. That should be the center point of all discussions on nuclear war and nuclear weapons, in my opinion. But it's been avoided by the leaders of the nuclear weapon states. Today, U.S. air defense systems have been shown to be ineffective against Russian hypersonic weapons. Let's see here. Russia has new weapons that are hypersonic, means that it goes faster than 5 times the speed of sound, or Mach 5. This ICBM the avant-garde warheads can go 20 times faster than the speed of sound. And they're maneuverable, so the U.S. missile defense cannot intercept these. These missiles can fly over the South Pole. U.S. early warning systems don't even look in that direction right now. And we can't stop these. Ballistic missile defense means it's a ballistic trajectory, or a parabola, that the warhead travels. It's a predictable trajectory that they can calculate where the warhead will be and intercept it. But hypersonic weapons don't travel in a ballistic trajectory, and they're actually maneuverable. So that makes them immune, basically, to our air defense systems. I want to talk about something else too. That I wrote a book on this, and I'll show you an image of an article I wrote recently. But if you detonate a nuclear weapon up above the atmosphere, say 100 to 300 miles up, it will create an electromagnetic pulse. Now that's a burst of energy that's invisible, that comes down at the speed of light, and it doesn't harm people or animals or cause structural damage, but it will induce massive voltages into any electrically conductive material, particularly power lines and antennas. This is a photo of the first EMP that was produced in 1958. It was taken from Honolulu, and the bomb was detonated 800 miles away. It's most likely this sort of attack would occur at night because that's when EMP is most effective in disrupting the grid. So let's see. This is an article I wrote for the UNS Review in 2025. If you want to look it up, it was entitled "An EMP Attack on the U.S. Power Grids and Critical National Infrastructure." And it was basically described an attack on the U.S. using 3 nuclear weapons detonated above the atmosphere, above Ohio, Nevada, and Texas. There's 3 grids in the U.S. It's designed to knock out our power grids. And I also have a picture of Japan superimposed on the U.S. on the right to show you that this attack could take place against Japan. Now, I go into detail in this article about the effects on power grids. It's likely to destroy most of the large power transformers that are required for the transmission of electricity unless you have specific protection for your grid. You're going to lose those, and you will basically be left without electric power for an indefinite period, because these transformers take years to manufacture and move. But I have a concern that's never been addressed publicly by anybody really about the threat to nuclear power plants, because the EMP-1 wave that comes down at almost the speed of light will destroy all solid-state electronic devices that are plugged into the grid. These are images of different transistors and diodes and things that are being exploded when this power surge comes down. A medium distribution power line will have 2 million volts and 5 to 10,000 amps induced into it by this EMP. In the United States, the 15 kilovolt lines that go to about 75% of the homes, businesses, and farms will have 200 to 400,000 volts induced into those lines. So, if you get 50,000 volts coming into your computers or refrigerators or anything in your house, they'll be destroyed. So basically, all of our critical national infrastructure, the ground, air, and sea transportation, the telecommunication, uh, sanitation, water and sanitation, pipeline fuels, everything is going to be disabled by this. GPS wouldn't work. This is a image. Well, let's see. I'll go back. Just if you see those circles there, the large circles are the area that's where the EMP covers from the one detonation, but the circle on the interior there is where there's 12,500 to 50,000 volts per meter from the E1 wave, and that's enough to fry the just about anything electronic, including the controls at a nuclear power plant, the emergency power system and the active emergency core cooling system. They're all full of solid state electronics. They're going to be disabled. Same thing happens in the U.S. That article describes the 26 nuclear power plants melting down in the U.S. If it was detonated over Japan, all these nuclear power plants would probably melt down within a day or two. So that's something that has not been addressed by anyone. And I think it's a really important subject. I have to ask now, do U.S. leaders believe they can win a nuclear war? You would think that the last thing they would want to do is get into a fight against an enemy that they have no defense against. Their air defense systems don't work. But it seems like our leaders are delusional at this point. Both the Russian and American presidents are fouled by this nuclear briefcase, they call it. It's an automated device that allows them to order a nuclear attack of 1 to 1,000 nuclear weapons in less than a minute. This is a permission order that's then sent to the National Command Authority, and it's relayed to the launch silos. If they're in the White House or the Kremlin, they don't need it. But if they go anywhere, even like the Vatican, that's going to be right there with them. So it only takes 5 to 15 minutes for the U.S. and Russia to each launch between 800 and 1,000 strategic nuclear warheads. We use intercontinental ballistic missiles. It takes 30 minutes for the flight time from the U.S. to Russia or vice versa. If we take a nuclear sub, the U.S. always has at least 4 nuclear subs in position to launch. They call it hard alert status, with other subs rotating back and forth. These subs each carry 24 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and they can carry up to 7 to 10 warheads each that are independently targetable. And if you put a sub off in the North Sea or the Barents Sea or off the east coast of the United States, it can hit a target in a little of 7 minutes. So that's why they have this hair trigger on everything. You have to call the president. The president might be given 30 seconds to make a launch decision in these circumstances. And once the missiles are launched, they can't be recalled. They don't have self-destruct mechanisms in them. What happens if a nuclear bomb is detonated, say above, this is a picture over New York City, there would be a fireball about 1 mile in diameter in 1 second. And this will set tens or hundreds of square miles or kilometers on fire. In tens of minutes, all the fires merge into one gigantic fire. We call it a nuclear firestorm. And the hurricane force winds will blow in towards the center of the zone because of the updrafts that are created. They're strong enough to uproot trees that are 3 feet in diameter. The air temperatures in the fire zone will go above the boiling point of water in 10 minutes. So anybody that's in the zone is not going to survive. Even in a deep shelter, you would not survive. Oh, let's see, I'm sorry. I'm going to compare the size of a firestorm in St. Louis. This would be on the left a 15 kiloton atomic bomb versus the 800 kiloton weapon. You can see these weapons are enormous. It's almost hard to grasp. But this is on an average weather day. The Pentagon actually doesn't even take into consideration the size of the fire because it considers fire variable. So they just look in terms of blast effects. So they're so disconnected from reality, actually. The U.S. and Russia are always on the lookout for an attack. This is an image of the NORAD command center. It's buried deep in a mountain. The Russians have the same sort of setup. So this is all hidden from us. The submarines are on alert. The launch officers are in their silos. But we go about our business, and it's been like this for decades. It's just, and people become accustomed to it, and they've sort of fallen asleep. And we assume nuclear weapons are required to prevent nuclear war. But a single failure of nuclear deterrence is enough to, wipe out civilization, if not most of the people on the planet. So we really have to wake up our leaders, and we have to focus on the environmental consequences of nuclear war, make that a central talking point when they talk about nuclear weapons and nuclear war. I can't just assume one nuclear weapon is going to be used. They've got thousands ready to use. And we're in a bad situation right now because, you know, there's a war in Ukraine going on where the U.S. is actually, and the generals in Wiesbaden, Germany, that the New York Times has specified that they're directing the attacks against Russia. We're launching drone attacks into Russia, hitting their oil refineries. They've been directed against the strategic bombers and nuclear early warning systems. Russia, under their doctrine, could actually use a nuclear retaliation against us for that, but it hasn't happened. But that's how dangerous it is. And that's Ukraine. And then, of course, we've got what looks like to me almost like a new crusade beginning in Iran. So, sorry, I mean, I hope the next speaker can be a little more inspirational than that. But I feel it's my obligation to inform people about these dangers so that they can, you know, wake up and wake up their neighbors and their friends and spread the word. We can do this with the internet. We have the ability to spread this information virally. And, you know, I wouldn't bother to do this if I didn't think there was any hope. I think there's plenty of hope, but if we wait until war breaks out, it'll be too late. So thank you for your attention on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Starr, for